heard that before? Has that coming?
During a stand here, someone's gonna find it. I don't remember that.
I don't think so, but I
It
didn't.
might be,
It could be, I don't,
Yeah.
it didn't shock me that it did.
right.
I think John is right in terms of reaching out to the base and all those hot button issues, the subcultural issues that we always talk about. So there was that in terms of the base, but then there were all of these minorities, right, who he featured throughout the evening. I think most of the folks who got recognition and stood up were people of color. There was Tim Scott. There was the guy who benefited from the Opportunity Zone. There was a woman who got the scholarship. There was a Tuskegee Airman. So there was that. And, listen, Donald Trump's administration is probably the least diverse ever in the history of administrations over the last 30 or 40 years. The Republican Party itself, the least diverse Republican Party we've seen in quite some time. But you have those appeals to African Americans and to minorities, and Van and I were talking about it. Does that matter to African Americans who might be looking at this, or Latinos?
Well,
in a way, but it also, I think, as we were talking about, matters to those suburban white women in particular who are nervous and turned off by Donald Trump's displays of intolerance, right? So I think in that way it worked for him. Listen, this is one speech, and we know who Donald Trump is on Twitter and on the road, so it's hard, I think, for him to stick to this. But for just average Americans who are tuning in, I think for this hour, they did that in a very effective way.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was as we say, I think it turned out as we expected. It was a blueprint for the re-election, the touting of the economy, the red meat for the base, the characterization of the opposition as socialists who want to take away your health care and give it to illegal immigrants, and all of that was there. The interesting thing was the outreach to minorities that I think was meant to reassure particularly some of these women who are nervous about him. He's running a huge gender gap. He needs to close it. I think divisiveness is one of the reasons. So I think that is one of those things. One of his motivations, and then the reunification of the family at the end and so on, which was a reality show touch, but probably worked with a lot of people. So this was a very, very well-crafted re-election. I'll leave the fact-checking to the fact-checkers, and it will enrage a lot of his opponents. But he did what he wanted to do. The question is, as I said before the speech, what is the half-life on it, and how much does he carry through on these themes moving forward?
There was the reality show touch that you were talking about, which I think was very effective. And then there was the real show, which was Nancy Pelosi sitting behind him the entire time, biting her cheek, biting her lip, refusing to smile, applauding sometimes, and standing a couple of times. But you can tell that the caucus was looking at her. There were members, as Wolf mentioned, who left. And then, of course, the ripping up of the speech in anger, I think.
I view it as a gesture for recycling.
Recycling.
Killing trees,
Right. And it was one of those moments where you honestly see this epic clash between these two powerful and important political figures, and he wouldn't shake her hand. She held it out, and she ripped up his speech, and she wouldn't smile and walked out. I mean, it was remarkable to me, and honestly, I couldn't take my eyes off of Nancy Pelosi at the beginning, not even having a conversation with Mike Pence, standing there as if they had nothing to say to
Because they had some early words on
very few.
Dr. Wallace.
Few early words.
I think the last 24 hours have been a big wake-up call for Democrats. That's what I think. The Iowa caucus was a debacle. And this was a very strong speech, and it shows what he thinks he needs to do to win. And I think we have to be very clinical about this. I think you're exactly right. He knows he's got to give a lot of red meat to his base, and he gave it. From religious liberty, abortion, all of it, the military, etc. But he's doing something else, and it has to do with how he's going to manage race in this thing. And there seems to be a trade-off between the Latinos and the African Americans. That's what you see. He went hard on the sanctuary city stuff. That is very, very disturbing. It turns out sanctuary cities are actually safer than non-sanctuary cities. The Cato Institute, which is libertarian, has come out and said that immigrants are committing less crime. So for some reason he thinks that doubling down on the anti-immigrant piece is a big part of this thing. At the same time, warning to Democrats, what he was saying to African Americans can be effective. You may not like it, but he mentioned HBCUs. Our black colleges have been struggling for a long time. A bunch of them have gone under. He threw a lifeline to them in real life, in his budget. He talked about that. He talked about the criminal justice reform. He talked about opportunity zones.
The school choice.
He talked about school choice.
Yeah.
Listen, wake up.
He doesn't have to be effective, he has to be effective to move margins at these states.
And the thing about it is, and I think that we got to wake up, folks. The whole bubble thing that goes on, we say, well, he said S-whole nations, therefore all black people are going to hate him forever. That ain't necessarily so. And I think what you're going to see him do is say, you may not like my rhetoric, but look at my results, look at my record to black people. If he narrowcasts that, it's going to be effective. Which means, as we move through this primary process, we've got to pay a lot more attention both to what's going on with the Latino vote, are we going to get a benefit in terms of having them respond, and with the black vote, is there going to be a split off, especially for black male voters? We got to be clinical about this stuff. We get so emotional about it. That was a warning to us, a warning shot across the ballot of Democrats. He's going to be enough black folks to cause this problem. It's not just the white suburban voters. He's going after black folks.
Can I just say one thing about this? The problem with that for him that he's going to have to balance is this was a speech off a teleprompter that was finely calibrated. Then you get into the room in those rallies and things are said that undo whatever he was trying to do there.
But then you look at some of the things they are doing on the ground in some of these communities. I mean, you talked about opportunity zones, and I've been talking to some of the Republicans black Republicans who do work in the administration, and they're doing some real work and reach out to some of these African American
So we
communities.
got to work hard. We got to work hard.
I just want to go to Jim Acosta. We're going to have more on the exchanges between President Trump and House Speaker Pelosi tonight, a lot more about the speech. But I want to go to Jim Acosta at the White House right now with reaction there. Jim?
Yeah, Anderson, I mean, I think this was a State of the Base speech, not a State of the Union speech. The State of the Trump base is strong. The State of the Union is deeply divided. That was on display tonight, and we're just getting some reaction to what happened inside that hall. I will tell you, I talked to a White House official just a short while ago, responding to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi ripping up the president's speech as soon as he was finished, right in front of the Vice President, Mike Pence, and this White House official said, for such a really big night, she sure behaved pretty small. But I will tell you, Anderson, I talked to a Trump advisor just a short time ago, just a few minutes ago, who speaks with the president regularly, who said, the president missed an opportunity here. He had a chance tonight with a deeply divided country watching to extend a bit of an olive branch, and when Nancy Pelosi reached out to shake his hand, he snubbed her. And in the words of this advisor, that was a missed opportunity. And so I think this just really sets the stage, as you all have been saying, for the months to come. Yes, the president had some heartwarming moments during this speech, but he was also engaging in some deeply divisive rhetoric aimed at immigrants, aimed at Latinos. And while, yes, he was trying to make appeals to the African American community, it can't be forgotten that he was awarding the Medal of Freedom to Rush Limbaugh, who has a history of making derogatory comments about African Americans. And so I think, overall, it's a wash. And as David Axelrod was saying, the base pays a lot more attention to what the president says at these rallies than what they do at the State of the Union speech. Anderson.
Very much from the White House. Back now with our panel. Rick and then Kevin.
Yeah, first off, I would just say that this was the best delivered speech that I've seen the president give. I mean, this was the most presidential speech Donald Trump has ever given. His tone was solemn. The idea that this was a base speech, as if this was some sort of rally speech, it was not a base speech. I mean, yeah, he talked about things the administration is doing and wants to do, just like every president does, and you don't go out and say, well, that's a base speech. I mean, he's talking about his agenda. That doesn't mean it's a base speech. It means he's putting forth his agenda, just like Gretchen Whitmer talked about the thing. So I think that's a complete mischaracterization. The thing, I agree 100% with Van. Yeah, maybe it's about suburban women. It's about minorities. And I know that everyone thinks, well, the president's rhetoric is really hostile to minorities. The reality is, in his rallies, he talks about African American unemployment. He talks about, youth poverty in African Americans. He goes through the litany at the beginning of this speech, where he talked to the facts of all of the different statistics of how well different groups of people, wage earners, manufacturers, blacks, Hispanics, in the context of all the other things he's doing, opportunities, there is a direct play. This president believes that his policies and what he's trying to accomplish is a different path, school choice, is a different path than the liberal statist path that the Democrats have laid out for the African American community. And he's making that pitch, and he's not gonna stop. And that's why criminal justice reform was so important to him. He is gonna go after that vote. Now, you may say he'll never work, he's a racist, everything. He is gonna go after that vote, and he's got a real good case to make.
What I think it is clear to me is that Democrats are gonna have to work harder to explain why our pathway is better than his. And I think there's been an assumption. Listen, African Americans gave black women 96% of our support to Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
Black men 88%. That's as close to unanimous as you get in the Democratic election anywhere in the world.
Obama was higher.
Well, it's close as you can get. And there is it's important now, I think, for Democrats to point out that that's a worthwhile investment to make in this party.
Donald Trump is gonna say you've been taken for.
We know that, but what I'm trying to say is that there is a liberal bubble that just dismisses all of it out of hand, and I think we are gonna have to sharpen our argument. That said, his attacks on the Latino community, I know you say he's only going after illegal immigration.
We're talking about criminal, illegal.
And you know what? White men are much more violent and commit much more crimes than the group he's talking about. He's picking this group out for a reason. He's picking this group out to demonize them and to hold them up for false scrutiny. And again, he's going after sanctuary cities. He's going after sanctuary cities when sanctuary cities are safer than non-sanctuary cities.
Rick, we haven't heard from the governor.
Can I just, it's all in, this speech was delivered all in the context of somebody who has lied now 16,000 times. And you remember when Obama was president and wanted to tout the gains in the economy? He was very sensitive about how people were feeling things on the ground, not to overstate stuff. And so tonight, he says, that he's created more jobs, 5 million more jobs than the Obama administration. That is a lie. And people across the country who are in these communities that have been hurting, particularly manufacturing communities, there is a manufacturing recession happening. He cannot go forth and claim that everything is rosy when individuals are not feeling that on the ground. When he brags about the stock market, yeah, the stock market's doing great, but half of America does not own stocks. 40% of Americans, a lot of them in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and a lot of the southern states too, the poor communities that 40% do not even have $400 in the bank account. So you cannot continue to say everything is great, it's wonderful, when the real GDP of everyday citizens is not that. And then one other thing I want to say, because he spent a good amount of time on healthcare, and I know we disagreed about this at the beginning, but truly, he has put forth a budget that is proposing to cut Medicaid by over $800 million and Social Security. To stand up there and say, I'm going to protect all of your health